Hello and welcome to quiz class. Today we have 100 questions on the 40s and 50s. My name is Ellen and I will be your host. Let's take a look at our quiz class awards. Let us know how you ranked in the comments at the end. We'd love to hear it. And we will be looking at 10 different categories, and here they are. And we will begin with discoveries for question number 1. What nuclear technology was developed in the 1940s? The atomic bomb, radiation therapy, or nuclear reactor? The atomic bomb. Which vehicle manufacturer produced the Jeep in the 1940s? Chrysler, Willys Overland, or General Motors? Willys Overland. What medical device was invented by Canadian scientists in 1941? The stethoscope, the G-suit, or the defibrillator? The G-suit. What was introduced at the 1939 World's Fair and then made commercially available in the 1940s? Television, computer, or radio? Television. Who invented the first commercial photocopier? Xerox, Canon, or Chester Carlson? Chester Carlson. What type of data storage was invented in 1947? DVD, magnetic tape, or the CD? Magnetic tape. Who invented the transistor in 1947? Bardeen, Brattain, Shockley, or Edison, or Tesla? Bardeen, Brattain, Shockley. What was the first antibiotic discovered in the 1950s? Erythromycin, penicillin, or tetracycline? Tetracycline. What was the first commercial jet airliner introduced in the 1950s? Boeing 707, de Havilland Comet, or the Douglas DC-8? De Havilland Comet. What was the first computer programming language developed in the 1950s? Fortran, Lisp, or COBOL? Fortran. And let's move over to television. For question number 11, what was the first TV show to feature a live studio audience? The Milton Berle Show, the Jack Benny Program, or the Texaco Star Theater? The Texaco Star Theater. Which 1940s TV show was set in a fictional town called Bedford Falls? The Honeymooners, the Philco Television Playhouse, or I Love Lucy? The Philco Television Playhouse. Who was the first TV personality to have a show named after him? Milton Berle, Fred Allen, or Ed Sullivan? Milton Berle. What was the name of the first TV news program? The March of Time, the Camel Newsreel Theater, or Meet the Press? The Camel Newsreel Theater. Who was the first woman to have her own TV show? Gertrude Berg, Faye Emerson, or Lucille Ball? Gertrude Berg. What was the name of the first TV variety show? The Colgate Comedy Hour, the Milton Berle Show, or the Jack Benny Program? The Milton Berle Show. Which 1940s TV show was set in New York City apartment building? The Goldbergs, The Life of Riley, or The Ruggles? The Goldbergs. What was the name of the first TV drama series? The Philco Television Playhouse, the CBS Television Workshop, or Studio One? Studio One. Who was the first TV personality to have a contract with a major network? Jack Benny, Ed Sullivan, or Milton Berle? Milton Berle. What was the name of the first TV game show? Spelling Bee, The $100 Question, or The Big Payoff? Spelling Bee. And let's move over to politics for question 21. What event triggered the U.S. entry into World War II? D-Day invasion, Pearl Harbor, or the Soviet invasion of Poland? Pearl Harbor. Which country was not a member of the Axis powers during World War II? Italy, China, or Japan? China. Which of the following leaders was not one of the main Allied leaders during World War II? Benito Mussolini, Joseph Stalin, or Franklin D. Roosevelt? Benito Mussolini. What was the name of the conference where the Allied leaders met to discuss post-war reorganization? The Casablanca Conference, Yalta Conference, or Potsdam Conference? Yalta Conference. Which political party did Harry Truman belong to? Socialist, Republican, or Democrat? The Democratic Party. What was the name of the plan to rebuild Europe after World War II? New Deal, Marshall Plan, or Lend-Lease Act? The Marshall Plan. Who was the Republican nominee for president in 1952? Dwight Eisenhower, Joseph McCarthy, or Richard Nixon? Dwight D. Eisenhower. Which amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified in 1951? The 20th Amendment, the 22nd Amendment, or the 23rd Amendment? The 22nd Amendment. Who was the Democratic nominee for president in 1956? Adlai Stevenson, Lyndon B. Johnson, or John F. Kennedy? Adlai Stevenson. What was the name of the policy aimed at containing the spread of communism? Marshall Plan, Containment Policy, or the Truman Doctrine? Containment Policy. And let's move over to technology for question 31. What was the first electronic computer developed in the 1940s? The ENIAC, the IBM 701, or the UNIVAC? The ENIAC. Which technology was used for the first time in the 1940s to transmit images over wires? Telephone, fax, or radio? Fax. What was the name of the first operational jet engine developed in the 1940s? The Lockheed Shooting Star, the Heinkel HE-178, or the Gloucester? The Heinkel HE-178. Which company developed the first commercial microwave oven in the 1940s? Raytheon, Whirlpool, or Westinghouse? Raytheon. Which technology was introduced in the 1950s to record and play back video? DVD, Ampex VR1000, or the Betamax? Ampex VR1000. Which company developed the first commercial hard disk drive in the 1950s? IBM, Microsoft, or Apple? IBM. What was the name of the first high-level programming language developed in the 1950s? C++, COBOL, or Fortran? COBOL. Which technology was introduced in the 1950s to transmit data over phone lines? Switch, modem, or hub? Modem. What was the name of the first commercial nuclear power plant opened in the 1950s? Obninsk Nuclear Power Plant, 3 Mile Island, or Calder Hall? Obninsk Nuclear Power Plant. Which company developed the first commercial credit card in the 1950s? Bank of America, Visa, or American Express? Bank of America. And we are moving on to sports. Who won the most NFL championships in the 1940s? The Green Bay Packers, the New York Giants, or the Philadelphia Eagles? The Green Bay Packers. Which boxer won the most world titles in the 1940s? Sugar Ray Robinson, Rocky Marciano, or Joe Louis? Joe Louis. Who was the first player to win the NBA MVP award in the 1940s? Joe Fultz, Max Lanier, or George Mikan? George Mikan or Mikan. Which team won the most World Series titles in the 1940s? The St. Louis Cardinals, the New York Yankees, or the Brooklyn Dodgers? The New York Yankees. Who was the leading scorer in the NHL in the 1940s? Sid Abel, Maurice Richard, or Gordie Howe? Or Howe? Gordie Howe. Who won the most NFL championships in the 1950s? The Cleveland Browns, the Baltimore Colts, or the New York Giants? The Cleveland Browns. Which boxer won the most world titles in the 1950s? Floyd Patterson, Rocky Marciano, or Sugar Ray Robinson? Rocky Marciano. Who was the first player to win the NBA MVP award in the 1950s? Bill Russell, George Mikan, or Bob Cousy? George Mikan. Which team won the most World Series titles in the 1950s? The New York Yankees, the Milwaukee Braves, or the Brooklyn Dodgers? The New York Yankees. Who was the leading scorer in the NHL in the 1950s? Gordie Howe, Maurice Richard, or Ted Lindsay? Gordie Howe. And we're moving over to literature for question 51. Which novel by George Orwell was published in 1949? 1984, The Great Gatsby, or Animal Farm? (1984). Who wrote the poem The Wasteland in 1940? Wallace Stevens, T.S. Eliot, or William Carlos Williams? T.S. Eliot. Which author wrote the novel The Stranger in 1942? Albert Camus, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, or Martin Heidegger? Albert Camus. Who wrote the play A Streetcar Named Desire in 1947? William Faulkner, Lillian Hellman, or Tennessee Williams? Tennessee Williams. Which novel by Ernest Hemingway was published in 1940? To Have and Have Not, For Whom the Bell Tolls, or The Old Man and the Sea? For Whom the Bell Tolls. Who wrote the novel The Catcher in the Rye in 1951? Jane Austen, Harper Lee, or J.D. Salinger? J.D. Salinger. Which author wrote the novel Invisible Man in 1952? Ralph Ellison, Langston Hughes, or Richard Wright? Ralph Ellison. Who wrote the play The Crucible in 1953? Ernest Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald, or Arthur Miller? Arthur Miller. Which novel by Ray Bradbury was published in 1953? Fahrenheit 451, Metamorphosis, or Something Wicked This Way Comes? Fahrenheit 451. Who wrote the novel Lolita in 1955? Vladimir Nabokov, James Joyce, or E.M. Forster? Vladimir Nabokov. And let's move over to history. We are at question 61. Which event occurred on July 20th, 1944? The assassination attempt on Hitler, the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, or the D-Day invasion? The assassination attempt on Hitler. Who was the leader of the Soviet Union during World War II? Mikhail Gorbachev, Leon Trotsky, or Joseph Stalin? Joseph Stalin. Which conference was held in 1945 to discuss post-war reorganization? Yalta Conference, Tehran Conference, or Casablanca Conference? The Yalta Conference. What was the name of the operation that dropped atomic bombs on Japan in 1945? Operation Trinity, Operation Manhattan, or Operation Barbarossa? Operation Manhattan. Who was the leader of the Chinese Communist Party during the Chinese Civil War? Mao Zedong, Zhou Enlai, or Sun Yat-sen? Mao Zedong. Which event occurred on June 25th, 1950? The end of the Vietnam War, the start of the Korean War, or the start of the Vietnam War? The start of the Korean War. Who was the leader of the United States during the Korean War? Lyndon Johnson, John F. Kennedy, or Dwight Eisenhower? Dwight D. Eisenhower. Which revolution occurred in Iran in 1953? The Iranian Constitutional Revolution, the 1953 Iranian coup d'etat, or the Iranian Islamic Revolution? The coup d'etat. Who was the leader of the Soviet Union during the Cold War? Nikita Khrushchev, Leonid Brezhnev, or Mikhail Gorbachev? Mikhail Gorbachev. What was the name of the operation that airlifted supplies to West Berlin in 1948 to 1949? Operation Vittles, Operation Manhattan, or Operation Berlin Airlift? Operation Vittles. Let's move on to music. Which big band leader was known for his theme song, Take the A Train? Duke Ellington, Benny Goodman, or Count Basie? Duke Ellington. Who was not a lead singer of the Andrews Sisters? Patty Andrews, Maxine Andrews, or Donald Andrews? Donald Andrews. Which jazz trumpeter was known for his hit song Flying Home? Lionel Hampton, Charlie Parker, or Dizzy Gillespie? Lionel Hampton. Who was the composer of the musical Oklahoma? Jerome Kern, Lawrence Hart, or Richard Rodgers? Richard Rodgers. Which blues singer was known for his hit song Ain't Nobody's Business? Jimmy Witherspoon, Howlin' Wolf, or Muddy Waters? Jimmy Witherspoon. Who was the lead singer of the rock and roll band Bill Haley and his Comets? Chuck Berry, Bill Haley, or Elvis Presley? Bill Haley. Which jazz saxophonist was known for his hit song My Funny Valentine? Sonny Rollins, Chet Baker, or Stan Getz? Chet Baker. Who was the composer of the musical West Side Story? Leonard Bernstein, Jerome Robbins, or Arthur Lawrence? Leonard Bernstein. Which country music singer was known for his hit song Hey Good Lookin'? Waylon Jennings, Hank Williams, or Johnny Cash? Hank Williams. Who was the lead singer of the doo-wop group The Platters? Paul Roby, Tony Williams, or David Lynch? Tony Williams. And we are moving over to business for question 81. Which company introduced the first commercial television system in 1941? RCA, Westinghouse, or Dumont? RCA. Who founded the Hewlett-Packard Company in 1947? Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard, or Bill Hewlett and Steve Packard? Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard. Which airline was founded in 1946 by C.R. Smith? American Airlines, Delta Airlines, or Southwest Airlines? American Airlines. Who was not a founder of McDonald's in 1948? Richard McDonald, Maurice McDonald, or Colonel Sanders? Colonel Sanders. Which company introduced the first electric toothbrush in 1948? Colgate-Palmolive, Oral-B, or Procter & Gamble? Oral-B. Who founded the Walmart retail chain in 1952? Sam Walton, Sears Roebuck and Company, or J.C. Penney? Sam Walton. Which company introduced the first commercial jet airliner in 1952? Boeing, Lockheed Corporation, or Convair? Boeing. Who founded the Intel Corporation in 1958? Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, Gordon Moore and Bob Noyce, or Bill Gates and Paul Allen? Gordon Moore and Bob Noyce. Which company introduced the first microwave oven in 1954? Raytheon, Whirlpool, or Westinghouse? Raytheon. Which company introduced the first videotape recorder in 1956? Toshiba, Ampex, or Panasonic? Ampex. And for our last 10 questions, we are moving on to culture. Which of the following was a popular fashion trend in the 1940s? Shoulder pads, platform shoes, or miniskirts? Shoulder pads. Who was the lead actress in the 1942 film Casablanca? Katharine Hepburn, Ingrid Bergman, or Greta Garbo? Ingrid Bergman. Which of the following was a popular music genre in the 1940s? Swing jazz, electronic dance music, or hip hop? Swing jazz. Who was the author of the 1947 novel The Diary of a Young Girl? Ernest Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald, or Anne Frank? Anne Frank. Which of the following was a popular dance style in the 1940s? Foxtrot, Jitterbug, or the tango? The Jitterbug. Who was the lead actor in the 1954 film Rear Window? James Stewart, Humphrey Bogart, or Marlon Brando? James Stewart. Which of the following was a popular fashion trend in the 1950s? Skinny ties, mini skirts, or poodle skirts? Poodle skirts. Who was the lead singer of the 1950s rock and roll band The Platters? Tony Williams, Zola Taylor, or Paul Roby? Tony Williams. Which of the following was a popular television show in the 1950s? I Love Lucy, The Twilight Zone, or The Honeymooners? I Love Lucy. Question 100. Which of the following was a popular music genre in the 1950s? Jazz, hip hop, or rock and roll? Rock and roll. And our bonus question, what was a popular dance style in the 1950s? Let us know the answer in the comments, and of course, how you ranked with our quiz class Einstein awards. There you have it. Thanks for playing this quiz. Don't forget to subscribe. We will see you in our next one. Bye-bye.